I started uploading my reviews on a consistent basis about 6 months ago. I've learned a lot in this short time, and I plan to keep this going well into the foreseeable future. For everyone who supported me so far, even just to take the time to watch what I've edited, I truly appreciate it. Today, for the sake of doing something easy, I'd like to go over the more notable games that I've reviewed this year. Not all of them were released this year, of course, so it's not particularly fair to call this a Games of the Year list. Although, I suppose the same idea applies. It's just the games of the year that I reviewed this year. I'll link each video individually in the description below in case you'd like to see the full review. First up is my bottom 10, the worst games that I reviewed this year. This isn't that bad of a game, but geez, is it ever stretched out. It's much better played cooperatively, and the weapon customization is great, but that doesn't fix the slow pace and grindy nature of the game. It should be noted that an updated version is being released for free for all owners of the original game, so there's actually more content now than when I originally reviewed it. Being able to throw back grenades and having the best puzzles yet doesn't cover up the overly designed crosshair and shallow melee combat. What truly kills it though is the awful character development, and a story-based game with a poor story is hardly worth playing at all. The idea here is neat, but the execution was botched beyond belief. Poor controls and repeated maps are a couple of the major issues, but this one has problems all around. There is definite potential here, so I would love to see another Siren game, but one under different direction. To call this an indie game would be a little misleading. Gunducky is more like a student project or a simple homebrew. With a little more polish and depth, there might be something worthwhile here, but its current form is way too basic to hold much value. Poor story and an all too forgiving difficulty make the single player campaign pretty pointless. Worse than that is the shoddy netcode and matchmaking for online, as well as how absurdly unbalanced the different characters are. It's received quite a few updates down the line, so maybe it's been improved, but this thing was borderline unplayable at launch, and I have no interest in giving it a second chance after that first impression. A well-told story, but for a story that isn't even there. Gone Home has to be one of the most pointless games that I've ever played. It feels like an internal studio's tech demo or some kind of gameplay test, but apparently, the wishy-washy narrative of a forbidden teen romance is enough to win awards. Honestly, the only reason I don't hate this game more is just because it was short and easy to play through, unlike the following games in my list. The awkward hitbox and worthless camera make this little else than a test in frustration. The graphics are charming and the music is nice and catchy, which helps a lot in keeping this game from being much worse than it already is. A game that is simultaneously too easy and too difficult, both for the wrong reasons and mainly due to mean tricks by the developers. What should have been a fun zombie adventure through London ended up as a massive waste of time. For some reason, I have fond childhood memories of this game. I don't understand why, as the controls are very awkward, the level design uses significant amount of backtracking, and this game just loves setting up ambushes without giving the player the proper resources to deal with them. It's a really early example of the cover shooter genre, and the 3D graphics look decent for the time period, but this just isn't a good game at all, and it's not worth playing. Oh boy, where do I even begin? Bad voice acting, bad controls, bad level design, bad music, bad story, glitches aplenty, and unclear objectives, and that only scratches the surface with Amy. This is seriously one of the worst games I have ever played in my life. It's either this or 25 to Life, and I'm really not sure which one to pick. The fact that the development team and publisher behind this released it in good faith is nothing short of insulting. With the bad news out of the way, I'll move on to my top 5 favorite films. This is a fun monster movie flick with a bit of lighthearted humor and some cool giant battles. Some of the actors don't really hit their mark, but it's plenty enjoyable nonetheless. Ridley Scott's Alien for a New Generation. It goes to show that the slasher genre is still alive and can be pulled off well with the right execution. Add on some decent acting and great effects for an all-around good time. I'm a big Castlevania fan, so maybe I'm a little biased, but this is a solid piece of work. The acting and animation are both strong, and adapting an NES game of all things cannot be easy, but it's pulled off very well here. If it weren't for the music, this show would be nearly flawless. The premise to Stranger Things had me at 1980 Silent Hill, but adding on great characters and a unique story only helped to seal the deal. Season 1 felt a little awkward here and there, while Season 2 lost a little bit of focus, but nonetheless, the show overall is a masterpiece. Easily one of the single greatest horror movies that I've ever seen. The acting is phenomenal, as is the cinematography, lighting, and set design. It's one of the few horror movies that legitimately unnerves me and keeps me up at night. This is a solid gold piece of filmmaking through and through. Definitely not for everyone, but it's worth checking out if you're looking for something different. And finally, the top 10 video games that I reviewed this year. Platforming and combat with a creative combo system and the tight controls that one would expect from WayForward. Well worth playing for any action game fan. It's shorter than its own good, but at least it doesn't overstay its welcome. It's still so insane to me that this game was originally cancelled. It's got some balance issues and technical limitations, but it's really creative and fun to play through. This one is by far the most disappointing game that I played all year. Maybe I got too caught up in the hype. But still, it was far from bad. The excellent controls and presentation make this a joy to play through. With some more focus and greater challenge, this could have easily been near perfection. But the beautiful presentation still makes it a fun world to explore, despite how absurdly bloated the game as a whole is. Not really a worthy successor to Resident Evil 4, but it's not for lack of trying either. The level design and weapon variety are great, although it falls flat with its stealth segment and some of its mechanics. It's a bit of a struggle to get through during its worst times, but it's well worth playing for fans of the genre. Great controls, unique premise, fun level design, and an overall creative approach make this an unforgettable experience. Similar to Mario Odyssey, it's held back by being so easy and doing so little to challenge the player. Thankfully, its excellent level design, unique world, and fun characters help to keep it a step above. The quest for piles of dosh and blowing up zombies into giblets returned big time. Greater variety between classes, upgraded enemies, and a new boss help make this a solid sequel. It's not quite a blanket improvement over the first game, but it's definitely worthy of the name, despite the optional cosmetic loot boxes. I feel like I only ever have bad things to say about this game. Balance issues are all over the place, leveling takes forever, upgrades are purely random, and so much of the game in general feels like it's based on luck. And yet, it's one of the best hide-and-seek games I've ever played, and the excitement I feel as either a killer or a survivor is second to none. Getting your attempts completely shut down is always annoying, but this game is never not fun. This is one of 2 games that I keep coming back to long after I did the review on it. It's not my favorite entry into the franchise, but it's a great example of how creative open world games can be. After giving the multiplayer another try recently, I found plenty of disconnection issues and ridiculous lag spikes, and I'm sure all of it is due to the game being peer-to-peer rather than server-based, which doesn't really work in a 5 versus 5 kind of game. Clearly, I've been spoiled by Titanfall 2. Still, it is excellent when it does work, and the single player is awesome and plenty of fun to play through. This might be the most jam-packed game I have ever played. The single player and multiplayer would have been plenty on their own, but the incredible freedom offered by SnapMap puts Doom in a league of its own. None of that would mean much if the controls, level design, and other aspects weren't polished, but Doom has it all in spades. If you love first-person shooters, you have to give both Doom and Titanfall 2 a try. Out of all the games that I reviewed this year, this was the big one that kept me coming back for more. The single-player campaign on its own is top-notch, but it's the multiplayer that really shines. The controls are as accessible as your typical Call of Duty, but with an incredible level of freedom of movement. The giant mechs are both powerful and vulnerable, requiring a careful play to keep them alive and useful. The maps are brilliantly designed, neither too large as a pilot nor too small as a Titan. Equipment customization is great, game modes are varied, the netcode is consistently excellent. This is an all-around outstanding game and easily one of the greatest first-person shooters I have played in quite some time. Near its launch, Titanfall 2 on the PlayStation 4 would typically hit an online population of around 30,000, which was somewhat low but perfectly playable. These days, after only a year on the market, it's depressing to see that number as low as 4,000, and I would imagine that that number is only going to continue decreasing. Clearly, no amount of free updates was enough to save it. It's still fairly easy to get into the more popular game modes, but I'm not sure if the longevity is there. Still, if you can get it for cheap, the single player campaign is nice. Thanks for sticking around to the end of this long list. I genuinely appreciate everyone who watches my videos, as few as you are, and I hope that you all enjoy them. Happy holidays and Happy New Year! Here's hoping that good things are coming for 2018 and beyond.